Welcome to Global Business on CGTN. I'm Michelle Vandenberg in Beijing. You're watching our 1-hour special live coverage for the send-off for the 45th U.S. President Donald Trump. In the next 60 minutes, Trump will leave the White House and attend a traditional farewell ceremony in Joint Base Andrews in Maryland. You're watching our live signal right now. He will also give an address before boarding Air Force One for Palm Beach, Florida. President Trump is spending his last few minutes in the White House as we speak. He's about to go to Joint Base Andrews for his official send-off. Meanwhile, the incoming President Joe Biden will be sworn in about 4 hours. Now, our correspondent Tony Muse is standing by in Washington, D.C. and joins us now. So, Toby, what is it like now where you are?
Well, frankly, it's very strange. This is not your normal inauguration. Every 4 years, these are normally boisterous affairs with tens of thousands of people coming into the city to show their support for the new president, or sometimes to oppose them. And this time, it's Washington, D.C. feels very quiet. Now, there's two reasons for that. Joe Biden's campaign had said they didn't want to have huge crowds of people in the middle of a pandemic for health reasons, so they dissuaded the crowds from coming. They're encouraging people to watch the inauguration online. The second is the violence we saw on January the 6th, there at the Capitol, the building you can see behind me, that left a death toll of 5 people. So now Washington, D.C., downtown D.C., is militarized. There are 25,000 National Guard here in the city. And so you see these roads that have been shut down around the Capitol entirely empty, save for these troops patrolling. Now, the rest of the day, the schedule is that Joe Biden will be sworn in alongside Kamala Harris. They'll both be sworn in at midday. They will become president and vice president at that moment. Lady Gaga will sing the national anthem. There's some more musical events scheduled for the day. And regarding Trump, as you said, Trump is due to leave the White House at possibly any moment, and then he will finally fly to Florida. And he is breaking that tradition of not attending his successor's inauguration.
Now, there are 15 executive orders on President Joe Biden's agenda today. Tell us more about his plans.
So all throughout the campaign, Joe Biden painted his campaign to become president as really taking the country back from this aberration he called Donald Trump's 4 years. So the idea is he really wants to hit the ground running and really reverse many of Trump's policies, he said, did tremendous damage to the country. But it's also interesting that Biden is announcing these executive orders because he gets the idea of just the size of the challenges this country faces. So some of the executive orders that he will be signing are reversing Trump policies. For instance, he will reverse the policy on leaving the Paris Climate Accord. The U.S. will join that again. Another one is reversing Trump's decision to leave the World Health Organization. Biden will sign an order to take the U.S. back. Another will be to make it mandatory to wear a face mask when on federal property. Again, drawing a contrast with Donald Trump. Biden constantly said the president failed to take the coronavirus seriously. Another one will be a moratorium on evictions, an acknowledgement of the problems with the economy. And another one will be to stop funding for that border wall between the US and Mexico. And the challenges Joe Biden faces are tremendous. There is an economy that is much weaker than people would like to see. We've had this pandemic, 400,000 people dead. The rollout of the vaccine has been much slower than anticipated. And finally, you have this very polarized country, this deeply fractured population who sometimes just can't seem to find anything that they can agree on at times. So these are the problems that Joe Biden faces. And once he becomes president, it's going to be on him to have to try to resolve them.
All right, it's going to be a long night for people like us in Beijing. Thank you so much for the update, Tony Muse, for us in Washington, D.C. Donald Trump's presidency has been a roller coaster ride of ups and downs, controversies and victories. Timothy Orick takes a look at the legacy he left behind.
Trump's White House has faced challenges from day one. The pandemic, the economic fallout, and violent protests, just to name a few. His culpability in these crises will be what historians study for generations to come. One example of this is the rise of right-wing violence. Just over a year into his term, far-right groups clashed with counter-protesters in Charlottesville, Virginia. Neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and other far-right groups converged on the city in August 2017. Many wore red Trump hats, showing their support for the president. His initial response to the violence was to blame everyone equally.
You had a group on one side that was bad, and you had a group on the other side that was also very violent.
That caused a major backlash from the public and media, and he later issued a stronger response. Critics also blame the president and his rhetoric for emboldening groups like white supremacists. President Trump's last year in office saw another surge in violent protests. The killing of George Floyd, a black man, by Minneapolis police sparked demonstrations across the country. There were weeks of violence, ebbing and flowing with new instances of police killings. There are some challenges that arose during Trump's term that would be difficult no matter who was in the White House. The coronavirus outbreak, to name one. Infections and deaths soared in his final year. The healthcare system was stretched to its limits, and unemployment rates reached record highs. Months into the pandemic, veteran White House journalist Bob Woodward revealed Trump knew the dangers of the coronavirus early on. Woodward released audio from a call he had with Trump in February.
I wanted to always play it down. I still like playing it down.
Yes, sir.
Because I don't want to create a panic.
President Trump defended the call by saying he wanted to keep the economy afloat. Foreign policy was where the Trump administration claimed many victories. These include becoming the first U.S. president to step into the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. While his meetings with DPRK leader Kim Jong-un may have not amounted to much on paper, it helped turn the page on relations between Washington and Pyongyang. But his foreign policy wasn't all wins. Trump pulled out of the Climate Paris Accord, the Iran nuclear deal, and the World Health Organization in his term. He also started a trade war with China, putting a major strain on ties with Beijing. And President Trump brought the U.S. to the brink of war with Iran at the start of 2020. He ordered the killing of Iran's top general Qasem Soleimani. The assassination infuriated the Islamic Republic, with Tehran vowing retaliation. The Trump administration faced its fair share of challenges, and the effects of his decisions are likely to be felt for a long time. In the very least, a legacy of its own of what a single-term president was able to achieve. Timothy Ulrich, CGTN.
Now for more discussions, let's bring our guest, Zhang Song. He was a former chief correspondent of Shanghai Wenhui Daily in Washington, D.C. So this is quite an uniquely different inauguration, to say at least, isn't it? With President Trump not present while 2,500 National Guards are in place. Your thoughts?
I think it's very weird. Trump will be the maybe only U.S. president who refuses to attend his successor's inauguration. And this reflects how divided the America is until today. And I think it will be a big challenge for President Biden to deal with. Even he is now going to be the president. His 4 years at least will be very tough.
Now, to reverse some of Trump's doings, 15 executive actions are also on the agenda. Tell us about them in terms of priorities, and how quickly does Joe Biden want to move?
I think Joe Biden just wanted to return this situation in America back to pre-Trump area. We remember that Mr. Obama and Biden were in the White House. So what Joe Biden is going to do is to return the situation back. And he's going to declare that U.S. is back in Paris Agreement. And he's going to announce that the United States is going to go back to the WHO. And the Muslim ban will be revoked. And many other things about this climate issue and the economic crisis issue, and this COVID-19 pandemic issue. He's going to announce a package of executive orders.
What about the new administration's policy towards China? What do you expect to see with Biden in office?
I think Joe Biden was a veteran on foreign affairs. He was, I think, chairman of Foreign Affairs Committee in the Senate for a few decades, and he is now having a lot of veterans, different diplomats working for him, like this Kurt Campbell and Jake Sullivan. And I think I'm not going to say the U.S.-China relationship is going to be good or bad. I think Biden's policy toward China, at least, is going to be more rational. It's going to be more predictable, and I think the relationship is going to be stable at least. We see a lot of potential things. The two countries can work together, like this pandemic issue, like this climate change issue, and also Biden has a lot of things to do with China on geopolitical issue, like this Iran nuclear issue and the North Korean issue. And I think that the two countries will work together on different issues. But China and U.S. also have a lot of differences. Situation today is much different from like 4 years ago when Biden was vice president. We will have a lot of differences. We are going to have a lot of competition and fight. But as Kurt Campbell, his top Asia advisor, was saying, we at least can do something good from very small things, like to invite those Chinese journalists back to America to work again, because a lot of Chinese journalists were expelled a few months ago by Trump's administration, and also these very tough visa restrictions. I think some of them will be, reduced. So more Chinese students, more Chinese tourists will come to the United States. I think China will do the similar things, but it is going to be different. It is going to be also very difficult.
Yeah. Now, apart from the official swearing in at 12 p.m. DC time, what else are you watching for the inauguration day?
I think in the afternoon, President Biden will sign some executive orders, and also this evening he will attend some ceremonial programs, and he will give a speech over there to encourage Americans to be united, and he is trying to heal the country. But more important things will happen in the coming few days, and I think he will have to have his political nominees to be passed by the Senate, and he will try to get 1.9 trillion US dollars to be approved by the Congress for the pandemic relief. And also he is going to need much more faster distribution of the vaccines, and also to move forward to control.
Sorry to interrupt, but we're
COVID-19.
seeing
Yes.
President Donald Trump walking out of the White House right now. He's about to leave the White House, and from there he will head to Joint Base Andrews in Maryland, where he will host a farewell ceremony in just a few minutes. You're watching a live signal of President Donald Trump. Trump will give his final speech as sitting president at the military base. We cannot really make up what he's saying, but we can see that he's walking out of the White House with his wife, Melania Trump. A quick background on his time in office. He swept to office in 2017, pledging to make America great again. But over the last 4 years, the 45th President of the United States instead presided over multiple instances of turmoil, including a bruising trade war with China. President Donald Trump is leaving the White House and heading to Joint Base Andrews in Maryland, where he will host a farewell ceremony in just a few minutes. All right, now let's welcome our current affair commentator, Anna Tangen, in the studio. So, as we watch President Donald Trump leaving the office, let's talk a little bit about what he has done to U.S.-China economic ties. Of course, there were the tariffs on Chinese goods. So what impact has that have on the U.S.? Let's start with that.
Well, if you look at it, I mean, China had a $300 billion surplus with the U.S. It's now higher than it was when he was in office when he started. And it's one of the highest in the U.S. history. So when you start looking at that, you have to say that it was not successful. It's kind of like the wall. He says it was successful, but it wasn't built. North Korea, Iran, all of these kind of international ideas that he had, he was going to tame everybody. It didn't really work out. So what he's really afraid of at this point is being labeled, as his niece said, a loser. And that is something that he's never been prepared. He calls other people that. He just does not want to be called that himself.
As we can see, the helicopter is taking off. What do you think of this year's inauguration? I mean, what an unprecedented, unusual event it is.
It is. I mean, there have been 3 other times when a president did not attend his successor's inauguration. There are 25,000 troops, armed troops, in the Capitol, standing guard to make sure that there's an orderly transition of power. This is a watershed moment. There might be many people who believe in Donald Trump. We'll see what they think of his 143 pardons and commutations and things like that, because it has yet to be written exactly what his legacy is going to be. It's not going to be a positive one, but how negative does it become, and how does his base see it? Are they going to see him as the hero they've always wanted him to be, this outspoken man of the people? Or are they going to see him as somebody who was, had many, many insecurities and let those rule his time in office instead of their interests?
Now, as he heads to his residence in Florida, how much of an impact or residual impact do you think he will continue to have going forward?
A lot depends. I mean, he's going to be hit with subpoenas and criminal indictments almost immediately. There was a small article last week where the federal government would generally take a guilty plea by an international bank like Deutsche Bank, which was his bank, is at the center of a lot of controversies involving him. But it was the borough of Brooklyn that took it, and they have an agreement that Deutsche Bank will cooperate with any and all investigations. This is not music to the ears of Donald Trump or his children. He could very easily find himself in a situation where the racketeering act, which was originally supposed to be used against organized crime, could be used against his company, because all it takes is 2 criminal acts by an organization over a 10-year period, and it appears that there are gathering storm of accusations about bank fraud, insurance fraud, evasion of taxes, and obviously once it is proven that the organization is corrupt, all those who benefited from it are now exposed. You don't have to have witnesses say he did this or she did that. All you have to do is say, did you get the money? Yes.
All right, that was Anna Tangen, our current affair commentator. We'll get back to him in just a few minutes. You're watching a live feed of Donald Trump leaving the White House, heading to Joint Base Andrews in Maryland. In just a few minutes, he will host a farewell ceremony. U.S. President Donald Trump pulled out of a number of global deals while in office, favoring a unilateralist approach. His successor, Joe Biden, on the other hand, says America's standing on the world stage has diminished and vows to play a bigger role. William Danslow looks at the task Biden faces.
On his first day in office, Joe Biden has pledged to rejoin the Paris Climate Accord and hold a climate summit within the first 100 days of his presidency. This marks a stark departure from his predecessor Donald Trump, who pulled the US out of the 2015 agreement on grounds that it put America at a disadvantage in global trade. President Trump's preference for unilateralism over multilateralism has played out frequently at the United Nations over the past several years. The Trump administration has pulled out of several UN agencies, including the World Health Organization and UNESCO. Joe Biden has vowed to rejoin the WHO and for the US to once again play a leading role in global diplomacy. As vice president in the Obama administration, the US negotiated the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the trade deal between the US and 11 other nations that would have covered roughly 40% of the global economy. But Congress didn't sign off on it, and President Trump pulled out of the agreement in 2017. Analysts believe a Biden administration might struggle getting lawmakers to agree rejoining the TPP. It remains unclear how the Biden administration's approach to trade will differ from that of his predecessor, but it's likely decisions will be made more in concert with US allies, a marked change from President Trump's tendency to go it alone. William Denslow, CGTN, New York.
Over the last 4 years, Donald Trump pulled out from a series of multinational treaties. On the security and military front, his administration withdrew from the Iran nuclear deal in May 2018, while its allies France, Britain, and Germany remained. 15 months later, the U.S. terminated its longtime intermediate-range nuclear forces treaty with Russia. Trump accused Moscow of failing to honor the agreement. Washington also pulled out of the decades-old Open Skies Treaty last November. The 1992 pact allows members to conduct short-notice and armed flight over other countries to collect military data. Washington also left other agreements, including the Global Compact and Migration Agreement at the end of 2017. Half a year later, U.S. delegates to the United Nations said the country would exit the Human Rights Council. The China-U.S. relationship also slid to a low point under Trump's tenure. Zheng Junfeng looks back at his policies against China.
Donald Trump's policy against China has failed. Why? Donald Trump is stepping down as U.S. president. Over his tenure, we saw the China-U.S. relationship slump to a low point. Trump oversaw the trade war, the Huawei chip ban, the move against TikTok, and just days before his administration ended, the blacklisting of dozens of Chinese companies. The Trump administration adopted the wrong strategy against China. China is seeking a friendly growth pattern with more opening up and deeper reform, but Trump saw China as an opponent, not as a partner. So did raising tariffs on Chinese goods to the U.S. change the trade deficit? In 2020, China-U.S. trade grew 8.8% to over 4 trillion yuan. China's trade surplus against the U.S. in November broke a 30-year record, so the two countries' trade relations were still resilient. And those tariffs, the American government collected it, and American consumers had to pay for it. For the Huawei chip and TikTok ban, Trump used domestic laws to replace international laws. He repeatedly cited national security reasons to ban Huawei and TikTok. But Huawei is still doing great in both 5G and smartphone. TikTok, still popular with over 100 million American users. People love them because they are good companies with good products, just like how the Chinese people love Apple and Tesla. China certainly did not ban these companies, citing national security reasons. Now we are happy that Joe Biden supports multilateralism and will work with other countries with humility. It's hoped that Trump's America First will be history. But how will the Biden administration treat Huawei and other Chinese companies? And can the extra tariffs on Chinese goods be lifted? The next few months or even years will bring us the answers.
The Chinese Foreign Ministry sounded a hopeful note today for China-U.S. relations under the new administration.
Over the past 4 years, due to the Trump administration's fundamental mistake in how it recognizes China, the U.S. has taken China as its biggest strategic rival or enemy. It has taken many actions to interfere with China's internal affairs and has spared no effort in containing and slandering China. This has seriously damaged China-U.S. relations. I think this is not in line with interests of the two countries' peoples. It is not what those in America, including ordinary American people who prefer healthy and steady relations, wish to see. So I think the new administration should listen to its people's wishes. I hope it can look at China in a rational and objective way, cooperate with China, and uphold the concept of mutual respect, equality, and mutual benefit. I hope it can push our relations back onto the track of a healthy and steady development.
In 2020, business ties between China and the U.S. remained tense under the Trump administration. And with the new administration, just how much of a policy shift on China can we expect? Yang Chengxi sits down with the president of the American Chamber of Commerce in Shanghai, Kurt Gibbs, on his take.
In terms of policy itself and trade and investment, I wouldn't really expect to be seeing a big shift in policy. We all know what the issues are, and the issues that were there under Trump are still going to be there under Biden. We're certainly going to see a difference in tone, a difference in style, a difference in approach. I think the Trump administration itself had more of a win-lose mentality and a real edge to the way they did things. So that type of approach will probably be very different under a Biden administration.
Now, even without Trump in office, the effect of Trumpism is still going to be strong in America's political circle. Do you see the influence of the so-called decoupling to continue to influence U.S. business operations in China?
I think it'd be a mistake to see Trumpism and the Trump effect to being the same as decoupling. So, in other words, decoupling is really more a result of a reassessment of where we are with the China relationship. And a lot of these things started under Obama. And frankly, that's a very disappointing development for someone like me who's been working in China for a long, long time. To be clear, I mean, it's a very different political and economic system that was true then as it is now. But the trajectory was towards a much more friendly relationship between the United States and China, increasingly so. That has changed, and I don't think it would be fair to say that it's only changed under Trump.
President-elect Biden has said that he will not roll back on the existing tariffs against China. With a change in administration, there are going to be new uncertainties over the trade talks between U.S. and China. And do you see this being dragged out even further into the future?
Well, yes. Our short-term expectation in our conversations with people in Washington, D.C., not conversations with the Biden administration, because that doesn't exist yet until January 20th, but our read on the mood in Washington, D.C. is that there's an appetite for basically leaving things as they are. The Phase 1 agreement was productive. It's a positive move. It was basically a ceasefire. But it also brought the tariffs down to a more manageable level. Also, more importantly, it did succeed temporarily, maybe, to lower the tension. So we don't expect much to happen in the short term. In the medium term, I think we may be headed for some rough water. I mean, there are certainly challenges ahead. There's real issues that have to be dealt with. So I think after the honeymoon is over, so for example, maybe after about 6 months, that's a period that the Biden administration is going to be looking for results. On the positive side, the distinct impression that we got talking with congressmen and career professionals in the administration who will stay on beyond Trump is that there's a real commitment to a China relationship. In other words, nobody in Washington, D.C. is ready to throw up their hands and give up on this. There is a real understanding and commitment to the idea that the United States and China must find a path forward.
Now we've got some live signal coming in. Donald Trump is arriving at Joint Base Andrews. About 500 guests are waiting for him at the military base. They're Trump supporters invited by the White House. All right, let's welcome back our guest, Einar Tangen, our current affairs commentator, to talk more about China-U.S. trade war. We were just talking about its impact on the U.S. What about its impact on China?
Well, it has been tough. There have been a lot of businesses that have been impacted. You know, we can talk about ZTE, Huawei. I mean, literally, Huawei went from being the #1 handset maker in the world, provider of infrastructure for 5G. They were a star in that area, and they worked hard to get there. And as literally, Donald Trump has tried to crush them. Not only from a business point of view, but he, in essence, kidnapped Miss Meng. I mean, you start looking at the number of banks and things like that who have been, laundered billions of dollars and all of these types of things. None of their, or very few of them, were actually seized at an airport and given extradition. This kind of medieval approach. If I can't get you, I'm going to grab your daughter or your son and use them as leverage. I mean, I thought that went out with the, the Crusades and things like that. But apparently, all things are go with Donald Trump. So in terms of the impacts, yeah, there have been very severe. And you're starting to see a lot of companies wonder what they are going to do. Now, they're not, these companies, foreign and domestic, are not moving to the U.S. And this is the big thing. There's been less than 2% of companies even thinking about going back to the U.S. And the reason is simply economic. If you start looking at the wage structure and the cost of doing business and everything like that, you can't equate it. So instead of, some of them are leaving China, or I shouldn't say leaving, they're balancing. What they're doing is they're moving part of their operations to other countries where it's lower cost in terms of labor, using that to supply the U.S., but then keeping their companies here in China so that they can cater to the domestic market. So it's had not the consequences that Donald Trump had wanted. He thought that he literally he was laying siege to China and that they would give in with his barrage of stuff. Actually, China is now stronger today than it was 4 years ago. They increased the time when China's, the amount of GDP it represents in nominal value, that means total, will surpass the U.S. by 2028 instead of 2030. And that's a big number. Now, on a per capita basis, China will still lag because it has a much, much larger population. But in the end of the day, history is going to record that all of his actions actually led to exactly the opposite of what he intended.
And what do you think the trade relationship between the two nations will continue? How will it continue when Biden is in office? Because it's kind of difficult for the new administration to have a softer stance on China following Trump.
Absolutely. I mean, there's bipartisan anti-China feeling going within Congress. It's going to be very difficult to walk that back. But there are real opportunities. I mean, climate change is not something that's going to go away. I mean, we can conquer COVID-19. We cannot conquer an extinction level event of the environment. And, you have people who are real believers in that who are going to be heading up. He has no less than 3 people who have said that, the climate change is going to be their #1 priority. So China has been a leader in that, while the U.S. has actually been lagging behind. It's Donald Trump who has been saying that he doesn't believe in this stuff and we don't need to do this, and cooperation, and walk out of the Paris Climate Accord.
As we can see on the live signal, President Donald Trump is arriving at Joint Base Andrews in his helicopter. About 500 guests are waiting for him at the military base. They're all Trump supporters invited by the White House. As we can see, he's walking with his wife, Melania Trump, to the military base. But some prominent people aren't here. Vice President Mike Pence will be skipping Trump's farewell ceremony to attend Joe Biden's inauguration. Top congressional leader Mitch McConnell is also expected to give Trump's event a pass. He will instead join Pence at Biden's inauguration.
I can add that this is a very disappointing crowd size for Donald Trump. He wanted thousands of people there to see him off, and this is going to hurt his pride. He did get his 21-gun salute, as you see, but this is going to be a crushing blow for a person who measures his popularity in the size of the crowd.
Now Trump is about to give his final speech as America's 45th president.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And we love you, and I can tell you that from the bottom of my heart. This has been an incredible 4 years. We've accomplished so much together. I want to thank all of my family and my friends and my staff and so many other people for being here. I want to thank you for your effort, your hard work. People have no idea how hard this family worked. They worked, and they worked for you. They could have had a much easier life, but they did a fantastic job. I just want to thank all of you, everyone. I want to thank Mark Meadows, who's here, someplace right there. I want to thank Mark. But it's been something very special. We've accomplished a lot. Our First Lady has been a woman of great grace and beauty and dignity. And so popular with the people, so popular with the people. In fact, honey, would you like to say a few words, please?
Being your First Lady was my greatest honor. Thank you for your love and your support. You will be in my thoughts and prayers. God bless you all. God bless your families. And God bless this beautiful nation. Thank you.
What else has to be said, right? But what we've done, that's true, honey, great job. What we've done has been amazing by any standard. We rebuilt the United States military. We created a new force called Space Force. That in itself would be a major achievement for a regular administration. We were not a regular administration. We took care of the vets, 91% approval rating. They've never had that before. The vets have given us, the VA, the vets have given us an approval rating like has never been before. We took care of our vets and our beautiful vets. They were very badly treated before we came along. And as you know, we get them great service, and we pick up the bill, and they can go out and they can see a doctor if they have to wait long periods of time. We got it so that we can sadly get rid of people that don't treat our vets properly. We didn't have any of those rights before when I came on, so our vets are happy, our people are happy, our military is thrilled. We also got tax cuts, the largest tax cut and reform in the history of our country by far. I hope they don't raise your taxes, but if they do, I told you so. And if you look at the regulations, which I consider the regulation cuts to be maybe even more important, that's why we have such good and have had such good job numbers. The job numbers have been absolutely incredible. When we started, had we not been hit by the pandemic, we would have had numbers that would never have been seen. Already our numbers are the best ever. If you look at what happened until February a year ago, our numbers were at a level that nobody had ever seen before. And even now, we really built it twice. We got hit. Nobody blames us for that. The whole world got hit, and then we built it again. And now the stock market is actually substantially higher than it was at its higher point prior to the pandemic. So it's really, you could say we built it twice. And you're going to see incredible numbers start coming in if everything is sort of left alone. Be careful. Very complex. Be careful. But you're going to see some incredible things happening. And remember us when you see these things happening, if you would. Remember us, because I'm looking at elements of our economy that are set to be a rocket ship up. It's a rocket ship up. We have the greatest country in the world. We have the greatest economy in the world. And as bad as the pandemic was, we were hit so hard, just like the entire world was hit so hard. Places that thought they got away with it, didn't get away with it. They're suffering right now. We did something that is really considered a medical miracle. They're calling it a miracle, and that was the vaccine. We got the vaccine developed in 9 months instead of 9 years or 5 years or 10 years or a long time. It was supposed to take a long time, many, many years to develop a vaccine. We have 2 out. We have another one coming almost immediately, and it really is a great achievement. So you should start to see really good numbers over the next few months. I think you're going to see those numbers really skyrocket downward. And I can only say this, we have worked hard. We've left it all, as the athletes would say, we've left it all in the field. We don't have to come and say, we'll never say in a month when we're sitting in Florida, we're not going to be looking at each other and saying, you know, if we only worked a little bit harder, you can't work harder. And we had a lot of obstacles, and we went through the obstacles. And we just got 75 million votes, and that's a record in the history of sitting presidents. That's an all-time record by a lot, by many millions in the history of sitting presidents. It's been really just an honor. One of the things we're very, very proud of is the selection of almost 300 federal judges and 3 great Supreme Court justices. That's a very big number. That's a record-setting number. And so we've done a lot, and there's still things to do. The first thing we have to do is pay our respects and our love to the incredible people and families who suffered so gravely from the China virus. It's a horrible thing that was put onto the world. We all know where it came from, but it's a horrible, horrible thing. So be very careful, be very, very careful. But we want to pay great love to all of the people that have suffered, including families who have suffered so gravely. So with that, I just want to say you are amazing people. This is a great, great country. It is my greatest honor and privilege to have been your president. I will always fight for you. I will be watching, I will be listening, and I will tell you that the future of this country has never been better. I wish the new administration great luck and great success. I think they'll have great success. They have the foundation to do something really spectacular. And again, we put it in a position like it's never been before, despite the worst plague to hit since, I guess you'd say 1917, over 100 years ago. And despite that, the things that we've done have been just incredible, and I couldn't have done it without you. So just a goodbye. We love you. We will be back in some form. And again, I want to just, in leaving, I want to thank our Vice President, Mike Pence, and Karen. I want to thank Congress, because we really worked well with Congress, at least certain elements of Congress. But we really did. We've gotten so much done that nobody thought would be possible. But I do want to thank Congress. And I want to thank all of the great people of Washington, D.C., all of the people that we worked with to put this miracle together. So have a good life. We will see you soon. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Now, what we saw just now was the outgoing President Donald Trump giving his final speech as America's 45th president. So what a speech, right? A lot on what he has achieved, a lot of blame, of course, including China for the coronavirus, and nothing about unity, not even mentioning President Joe Biden's name. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, this is not the Donald Trump that we knew, that we saw at these huge rallies. This is a much more muted Donald Trump. And it seems that he has a new counter-narrative, and that is that he has laid the foundation for a successful America. So anything that happens during Biden's term that is positive, he's going to claim was his. You can expect to hear that more and more often. What was a little bit sad was, he could only thank his family and Mark Meadows. There was no one else there, or if they were there, he didn't choose to recognize them. That is a real departure. Generally, the thank yous are longer than the speech itself. He did claim a lot of credit. One thing that struck me, and I'm sure the fact checkers will look at it, that he has 91% approval by the vets. I don't know if that's going to be the strong military, the Space Force, tax cuts, getting rid of regulations, large jobs, but he didn't mention the joblessness. I mean, there's no negatives in his speech about anything that happened during his time. The pandemic, he talked about it as in a past tense. It was the greatest thing. And I don't think he has a recognition that, the United States has just passed 24 million people infected, that it has over 400,000. To put that number in perspective, during World War II, the entire military and civilian casualties was just under 225,000 people. 425,000 people. So within a few days, less than a week, actually there will be more people who have died from COVID-19 than in World War II on behalf of the United States. Yeah. So, it's not what we were expecting. We thought there would be larger crowds there. Remember, he sent out invitations even to people who don't support him and urged them to bring 5 people with them. So you can do the math, 500 people, very disappointing.
Yeah. I don't think there were even 500 people there. I didn't see a lot of them.
I don't think it's necessary to humiliate him any further. He is exiting literally at a time when history is going to pronounce him probably one of the worst presidents in history. He has to look forward to an impeachment trial in the Senate, where all of the allegations of what he had done in the time leading up to the insurrection, his words during it, his unwillingness to step in once it started, even though Mike Pence, his loyal lieutenant, and his wife and daughter were under direct threat. He was apparently watching the television and said no. He seemed amused or happy to see crowds of people acting on his behalf. Then we start getting into the civil lawsuits. Women have accused him of slander for denying that he molested them. We know that he's paid off some people and things like that. There might be more actions there. There's the issues about whether he accepted money and his children accepted money illegally. As a government official, you're not allowed to mix your business with your government work, the Washington Hotel. Then there's business interests. Right now is a terrible time to be in the entertainment industry. You have golf courses and hotels, they're empty, especially with the kind of lockdowns that are coming. So he's going to have a very, very difficult. He has a large amount of debt that is due very soon. It's all of the banks have walked away from him. So where is the money going to come from if it's not coming from cash flow or from loans?
And he also called the COVID-19 virus China virus again. That was quite surprising, while the origin of the virus is unclear right now.
Well, but it doesn't matter. Even if it was scientifically proven to come from somewhere else in the United States, he would say it's false, fake news. We all know it came from China. This is just something he's going to say regardless of what the facts say. It's the narrative he wants to portray that he wants. Now, remember, he mentioned back in February, how it was a surprise. But you also, if you can go back and look at the footage, he's quoted on something. He was asked by a reporter. He said, "We're ready," and he made it very clear that he was on top of it. Now that the U.S. has the worst record in the world, despite having, the preeminent power economically, medically, etc., is really disappointing. It points to a massive mishandling of it, and the criticism of China in part is to make up for the fact that China has been able to handle the COVID-19 situation, whereas the U.S. has not. So it's easier to change that narrative.
Now the footage we're watching now is the 45th President of the United States walking up Air Force One, and the Air Force One is about to carry the soon-to-be former president to Palm Beach, Florida. So during his speech, he also mentioned about, one of the things he did right, he said, was tax cuts. And he's saying that Joe Biden will raise taxes, which is one of Joe Biden's economic plans for the U.S. But that won't happen until the coronavirus is contained in the U.S. What's your thoughts on Joe Biden's economic policies?
Well, let's talk about why he's going to have to raise taxes. I mean, the tax cuts were achieved by running up $1 trillion a year deficits. So at some point, it's like a credit card. At some point, you have to pay it off. You can't just enjoy what you're getting. So these tax cuts were dearly purchased at a time when the U.S. economy was roaring, not due to his efforts. They were picking up at the end of Obama's time. It was the natural economic cycle. Of course, the tax cuts helped. It's like adding sugar to a child. It'll zoom around and won't want to take a nap. But it at a very heavy cost in terms of the deficit. Now, when the U.S. needs it most, they need that borrowing power, it's not there. They're going to have to borrow anyways, but it's going to have an impact on the U.S. dollar. It's certainly going to have an impact economically as a nation struggles to survive. But, the money is one thing, but the colossal mishandling of COVID-19, underestimating it, that will really stand out in history as something that was criminal, because almost criminal, in the sense that so many people died and so many lives were affected.
It's going to be a sleepless night tonight for many of us. As we know, Joe Biden's swearing in is at 1 a.m. our time. What do you expect him to say?
Well, I mean, Joe Biden, it's a very simple formula. He's going to talk about unity first. You saw his speech when he left Delaware. It was an emotional speech. It was one which was genuine. There was nothing fake about it. He had compassion for the people who had died. You saw that again at his speech at the memorial for the 400,000 people who died just last night. He was there with Camilla Harris. There was a moving song, Amazing Grace. And you could see that he is a person of the people. So first is unity. Then he's going to talk about the most important things to America, which right now is combating the COVID-19, and that means rolling out this vaccine. He's been very vocal about his disappointment about the mishandling of the rollout, and he intends to press not only the military and all resources the government has, but also in the private sector. He has powers where he can say, look, you're going to have to produce this for us. We're demanding that you do that, and I have the power to do it. Then you have to start tackling this issue of the pain and suffering that the American people, those least able to afford it, are now undergoing. And that means finding ways to keep businesses open, to keep people from being evicted from their homes. And then, finally, after about the 100th day, You can expect him to start putting a very strong message across on the environment, on world peace, doing something about the international situation. He's going to have to, at some point, start talking to his allies of before and trying to convince him that not only is he sincere, but that America is a reliable partner. I mean, you cannot mistake what the EU has done in the last couple of weeks, signing a trade agreement, and then yesterday making it very clear that they're going to take the euro and they're going to raise it to parity with the U.S. in terms of its ability to trade and be independent, so they're not at the beck and call of U.S. sanctions. This has been something that really, really rankled them. Trump's support for Brexit, this was not something that they were looking for. So there's so many different issues out there that he has to attend to. But first, it's about unity and taking care of the health.
Unity and the pandemic. Yeah, looking forward to all the changes that's going to happen. Thank you so much for your insights. That was Anna Tangin, our current affair commentator. And that will do it for this edition of Global Business on CGTN. I'm Misha Vandenberg in Beijing. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.